Years after we got married, my husband forbade me from visiting his mother's house back in his hometown, insisting it was under major renovations. Then one day I found out the truth. My mother-in-law had been dead for a month. When my husband left on a work trip, I went to his hometown in secret to see her house for myself. And the moment I unlocked the door and pushed it open, I froze. My hands started shaking. My chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. Before we get into it, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories like this, hit like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow so I can bring you even more intense, unforgettable stories. Sarah had been married to Ryan for 8 years, and from the outside their life looked steady, even enviable. They owned a comfortable home on the edge of the city. Ryan worked as a regional manager for a logistics company, the kind of job that came with a clean suit, reliable income, and frequent travel. Sarah, soft-spoken and modest, chose to focus on their household after the wedding. Most days were calm, predictable, safe. Yet one silent problem kept pressing against her heart like a bruise. The door to Ryan's family life that she was never allowed to open. That door was his mother's house, in a small town called Maple Hollow. In 8 years, Sarah had met Ryan's mom, Helen, only 3 times. Twice when Helen visited the city early in their marriage, and once during their first year, when they briefly went back to Maple Hollow. Sarah remembered Helen as quiet but gentle, the kind of woman who didn't talk much yet made you feel seen when she placed a warm hand on your shoulder. Sarah wanted to know her better. She wanted to belong. But 7 years ago, Ryan shut that path down and never reopened it. Every time Sarah suggested a visit, Ryan repeated the same line. "Mom's place is being renovated. It's a mess. Let's wait until it's done." At first, it made sense. Ryan explained the old house needed serious work. Rotting wood, a leaky roof, a foundation that had shifted over time. As an only child, he said he felt responsible. "I want her to spend her later years somewhere safe," he told Sarah, and she felt proud of him for caring so much. But 1 year of renovations turned into 2, then 3. When Sarah asked how it could take so long, Ryan always had an answer that sounded logical, but never felt right. "The soil's unstable. We had to redo part of it." Or, "The contractor keeps messing things up." His tone would sharpen just enough to make Sarah retreat, embarrassed for questioning him. Every holiday she prepared thoughtful gifts for Helen, baked treats, warm shawls, small things she hoped would make Helen smile. Ryan would deliver them alone. "It's a long drive," he'd say. "It's dusty there. I don't want you uncomfortable." Sarah tried calling Helen herself. Early on, Helen picked up sometimes, her voice thin and tired. When Sarah asked when she could come, Helen always answered softly, "Ask Ryan, sweetheart. I'll do whatever he thinks is best." Then, for the last 2 years, the number never worked. Ryan brushed it off. Her phone broke, and out there the signal's terrible anyway. Again, it sounded plausible. Still, the story left a sour taste in Sarah's mouth, like something sweet that had started to rot. 3 months before everything exploded, the unease turned into something sharper. It was a dry season, the kind where dust hangs in the air and the ground cracks under your shoes. Ryan came home late one night after saying he'd gone to Maple Hollow to handle contractor payments. Sarah knelt by the front door, helping him with his shoes, and went still. His expensive dress shoes were smeared with wet red mud, thick, fresh, sticky, like he'd walked through a flooded field after heavy rain. "Ryan," she asked carefully, "where did you step in mud? It hasn't rained in weeks." He froze mid-motion, loosening his tie. His tired face tightened, and his eyes flicked to the shoes, then away. "I stopped by a friend's site," he said too quickly. "Work stuff." Sarah swallowed. "But it's been dry for months. Where would mud like this even come from?" She wasn't accusing him. She was confused. That was the first time Ryan snapped at her. "Why are you so suspicious? I've worked all day and you're interrogating me over shoes. Do you think I enjoy driving back and forth?" "I'm doing this for my mother. Show some appreciation." Sarah felt heat flood her eyes. Ryan had never yelled at her like that. She set the shoes down with shaking hands. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Ryan cut her off with a hard, exhausted enough and walked past her toward the bathroom. That night, Sarah lay turned away from him, crying silently, not because of his anger, but because his voice carried the unmistakable scent of a lie. Whatever he was hiding, it was big, and it lived in Maple Hollow behind that never-ending renovation. After that, Ryan became almost painfully sweet. He bought Sarah a new dress, took her to an expensive restaurant, complimented her constantly, like he was patching a crack with gold paint. Sarah accepted the gestures with a thin smile, not softened, just quiet. Something in her had shifted. She stopped pushing, but she started watching. Ryan still acted like a caring husband in every normal way. Yet the moment Helen or Maple Hollow came up, his eyes changed, his shoulders stiffened, and the air between them cooled. Then, on a Saturday morning, the truth came knocking. Sarah was arranging a dessert on a plate in the kitchen when a car horn sounded outside their gate. A sleek black sedan stopped in front of their house. A sharply dressed man stepped out carrying a thin leather briefcase. He hesitated, checked an address on his phone, and rang the bell. Sarah adjusted her headscarf and went to the door, meeting Ryan in the hallway. He opened it with polite caution. "Can I help you?" The man offered a restrained smile. "Good morning. Is this Ryan Carter's residence?" Ryan's face tightened. "Yes, I'm Ryan." The man held out a business card. "My name is Matthew Grant. I'm an attorney. There's a private matter I need to discuss regarding—" His eyes flicked to Sarah behind Ryan, and his voice lowered. "Regarding Helen Carter." Sarah's heart clenched. Ryan went pale so fast it looked like the blood drained out of him. "My mother," he rasped. "What about my mother?" Grant's expression didn't soften. "I'd prefer to speak inside. It concerns something deeply personal." In the living room, Sarah brought water with trembling hands. She barely heard the glasses clink as she set them down. Grant sat upright, calm and professional. "Ryan, Sarah," he began, "I'm here as counsel appointed by the late Helen Carter." The word late hit Sarah like a punch. Her hands went numb. "Late?" she echoed, almost inaudible. Ryan stared at the table like it had swallowed his voice. Grant exhaled slowly. "I'm sorry for your loss. Helen passed away 32 days ago. Acute kidney failure. Per her written instructions, I was to contact Ryan, her sole heir, exactly 30 days after her death to handle the estate." Sarah couldn't breathe. 32 days, over a month, and no one told her. Her shock turned quickly into something burning and sharp. Ryan had known. He had to have known. The muddy shoes, the stiff lies, the panic the moment Helen's name was spoken, it all snapped together like a trap closing. Ryan covered his face with both hands and let out a shaky sob. "Mom," he choked. Sarah stared at him, cold. His grief looked rehearsed, like a performance he hoped would cover the stench of what he'd done. Grant cleared his throat, uncomfortable, and opened his briefcase. He placed a large envelope and a ring of old keys on the table. "Per the validated will," he said, "all assets in Helen's name, including the house and land in Maple Hollow, have been legally transferred to you, Ryan. These are the documents, and these are the keys to the property." The keys looked aged, heavy, important, like metal shaped into a secret. When Grant left, the silence that remained felt murderous. Sarah finally spoke, her voice flat. "1 month. Ryan flinched. "Your mother died over a month ago and you didn't tell me." Ryan's eyes were red, his expression frantic. "Sarah, I can explain. I was falling apart. I didn't want you to be sad. You lied." Sarah cut in. Her words were steady, but her hands shook. "You went there 3 months ago. Your shoes were covered in wet mud. That wasn't for renovations, was it? She was sick." Ryan's mouth opened, then closed. "Yes," he admitted. "She was sick. I took her to the clinic. I didn't want to worry you." "Then why didn't you tell me she died?" Sarah's voice cracked with rage and grief. "I'm your wife. I was her daughter-in-law. I couldn't even pray for her at her burial." Ryan stood suddenly defensive. "I didn't want you to see it. The house, everything was chaotic. The renovations weren't done. I was ashamed." The renovations again. Even in death, he hid behind that same wall. He grabbed the envelope and keys and locked them away in his office drawer with a soft click, as if he could lock truth itself inside wood and metal. The next 4 days were the longest of Sarah's marriage. Ryan acted like a morning sun, quiet, distant, staring at blank screens, sighing dramatically when he thought she wasn't watching. Sarah watched anyway. She saw not sorrow but fear of being exposed. She carried on with routine, coffee, meals, laundry, but moved like a machine, no warmth, no small talk. She studied Ryan's every habit, waiting for the moment he would give himself away. The moment arrived on the 5th morning, over breakfast, when Ryan cleared his throat and avoided her eyes. "There's an urgent work situation," he said carefully. "A project out of state. I'll be gone a week, maybe 10 days. I leave tomorrow morning." The timing was too perfect. Sarah felt a quiet pulse at her temple, but she didn't react the way he expected. "Okay," she said, voice calm and distant. Ryan's shoulders loosened with visible relief. "You'll be all right here?" he asked, hope hiding in the question. He wanted permission to vanish. Sarah met his gaze without softness. "I'll be fine. Go handle your work." Ryan smiled too quickly. "Thank you. I'll call every day. I promise." That day, Sarah watched him pack, and the wrongness grew heavier. He hummed under his breath. He smiled at his phone. He looked excited, not grieving. That night, he went to bed early, claiming he needed rest for the flight. Sarah lay beside him, awake, listening to his even breathing, feeling like she was sharing a bed with a stranger. When dawn came and he kissed her forehead goodbye, his lips felt cold. The front door closed. His car started. The sound faded. Sarah opened her eyes wide in the dark and sat up at once. Her heart wasn't pounding from fear. It was pounding from decision. Ryan's home office was the one room Sarah never entered. He didn't forbid it outright. He didn't have to. He always kept it locked when he wasn't inside. Sarah tried the handle. Locked, as expected. She forced herself to think like him. Ryan was organized, confident, and careless in one specific way. He never imagined Sarah would break his rules. She went to the laundry room and searched the pockets of his dirty work pants. 2 were empty. The third, black slacks, held something small and cold, a silver key, likely for a drawer. Sarah's breath caught. The keys to Maple Hollow had been locked away, but now she had a way in. She found the spare house keys hanging near the front door, keys Ryan assumed she'd never touch. Her hands trembled as she slid the office key into the lock. Click. The sound was loud in the empty house. Inside, the office smelled like Ryan, expensive cologne and paper. Everything was neat, controlled. Sarah went straight to the desk. The top drawer was locked. She inserted the small silver key from his pocket. It turned smoothly. The drawer opened, and there they were, the old keys from Grant, lying atop documents like a crown on a pile of lies. Sarah reached for them, but something else caught her eye, a thick blue folder labeled in Ryan's tidy handwriting, "Renovation." Her pulse sharpened. She opened it, expecting designs or permits. Instead, she found stacks of receipts, cement, lumber, paint, fixtures, dated with almost obsessive regularity at the end of each month for the last 7 years. All from a supplier in the city, not Maple Hollow. The amounts looked too perfect, too consistent, like a fake financial trail designed to be found if anyone ever questioned him. Then she saw a folded note, worn from handling, written in a different hand. The medicine ran out again. He needs it, not your mother. Him. Sarah crushed the note in her fist. Medicine for who? He. Who was he? A child? Another person living in that house? The lies suddenly felt darker than an affair, darker than embarrassment. Sarah slid the keys into her pocket, returned everything exactly as she found it, locked the drawer, locked the office, and hung the spare key back in place. She stood in the brightening living room, fingers wrapped around cold metal, and felt fear evaporate into something harder. Ryan had given her a week. That was more than enough time to open the door he'd been guarding for 7 years. Sarah packed quickly and quietly. No suitcase, too noticeable. She took an old backpack, added a couple of changes of clothes, toiletries, and the cash she'd saved in a hidden spot. She wouldn't use cards. Transactions could be traced. She kept her phone on silent rather than off, deciding she could ignore calls and later send casual excuses. Shower, nap, missed it. She ordered a rideshare to the bus terminal instead of the train station, less formal, less tracked, more anonymous. As the car moved through the waking city, Sarah stared out at people living ordinary lives, while she felt like she was stepping out of her own life entirely. The bus ride took hours, carrying her from crowded streets to open fields and small towns. Sarah watched the landscape change and tried to assemble the puzzle pieces. Ryan said the road to Maple Hollow was terrible, isolated, hard to reach. But when she arrived at the county terminal and asked a driver how to get there, he blinked like she'd asked something obvious. Maple Hollow, easy. Take the blue shuttle. The roads were smooth. The town wasn't remote at all. That was lie number one, confirmed, and Sarah's stomach tightened with the certainty that more were waiting. On the shuttle, Sarah asked an older woman beside her, keeping her voice casual, "Do you know where Helen Carter's house is?" The woman's friendly expression shifted into pity. "Oh, honey, she passed more than a month ago." Sarah's throat tightened. "I'm a distant relative," she lied, unable to say daughter-in-law without feeling shame. The woman gave clear directions. "Get off by the community center, then walk down the lane by the little store. Last house on the left, white paint, beautiful garden." Sarah went still. Beautiful garden, white paint. That didn't sound like a wrecked renovation site. She followed the directions on foot, each step tightening the knot in her chest. The lane was neat, paved, lined with tidy homes. Then she reached the end and stopped as if her feet had been nailed down. The house in front of her was not under renovation. It was stunning, semi-modern, freshly painted, spotless windows framed in polished wood, and a garden that looked professionally cared for. Thick green grass, blooming roses, orchids, jasmine. No dust, no debris, no workers, no stacked supplies. Sarah felt nausea climb her throat. Ryan hadn't been hiding a broken house. He'd been hiding a perfect one. And that, somehow, was more frightening. The front gate wasn't even locked. Sarah walked up the path, her palms slick, and slid the large key into the main lock. It turned smoothly. The door was unlocked, and still Sarah couldn't push it open. The house felt like a monument built out of deception. What could be inside that required 7 years of lies, fake receipts, and distance? As she stood frozen, a voice startled her from the side. "Excuse me, are you looking for someone?" A middle-aged neighbor stood behind a hedge with gardening shears in hand, watching curiously. Sarah forced air into her lungs and turned. The woman's face was open, kind. "You're here for Helen's house," she said gently. "Poor thing, she's been gone over a month. Who are you to her?" Sarah's mouth went dry. The lie stuck in her throat. She needed answers more than she needed pride. "My name is Sarah," she said, voice tight. "I'm Ryan's wife." The woman's eyes widened as if Sarah had said something impossible. "Ryan's wife?" she repeated, nearly dropping the shears. "Oh my God, I'm Denise Dawson, Helen's next-door neighbor. Honey, we all thought you were seriously ill." Sarah felt the world tilt. "Ill?" Denise nodded quickly, almost apologetic. "Ryan told everyone for years that his wife in the city was very sick. He said you couldn't handle dust, stress, travel, anything. We felt so sorry for him. We thought he was this devoted husband stuck between a sick wife and a sick mother." Sarah's jaw clenched so hard it hurt. So that was the story Ryan sold Maple Hollow. Renovations for Sarah, illness for the neighbors, heroism for himself. "What was wrong with Helen?" Sarah asked, voice hoarse. Denise's face darkened. "That's the strange part. Helen was fine until about 2 years ago. Then she vanished, locked inside her own house." Denise explained in hurried, frustrated bursts. Neighbors tried to check on Helen, but Ryan always seemed to appear at the right moment. He claimed Helen needed sterile conditions, that she was too weak to see visitors, that germs were dangerous. He raised the fence higher. "He said it was for security," Denise whispered, "but it felt like a prison. When Helen died, the funeral happened fast. A few neighbors attended, but Ryan kept it quiet. He said he didn't want to burden anyone, Denise said. And he told us you were too fragile to hear the news, too weak to be told your mother-in-law died. Sarah's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. Then Denise added something that stabbed deeper. The house wasn't being renovated. It was painted years ago, and that was it. But deliveries came, big trucks, expensive furniture, and sometimes boxes of children's toys, bikes, dolls, little cars. We wondered why. Ryan said it was for charity. Sarah's hand tightened around the key in her pocket. Toys, the note about medicine. Denise lowered her voice further. And at night, I heard voices. Not Helen's, a younger woman, sometimes laughing, sometimes arguing quietly, and I swear I heard a child. Sarah's blood seemed to drain to her feet. Denise looked at her with aching sympathy. You really didn't know, she said softly. Go in, you deserve the truth. If anything happens, call out. I'm right here. Denise retreated to her porch, leaving Sarah alone with the unlocked door. Sarah inhaled once, deep, like she was preparing to dive underwater, and pushed the door open. The hinges were oiled. It opened silently, like it had been waiting for her. Cold air spilled out, unnaturally cold, like the AC was set too low. The smell hit next, expensive floral air freshener mixed with antiseptic and something stale, trapped. Inside, the living room looked like a luxury showroom. Polished stone floors, pale leather sofas, a huge flat-screen TV, everything spotless and barely touched. Then Sarah's eyes found the wall of framed photos. Dozens of matching silver frames. All of Ryan. Ryan smiling in front of famous landmarks. Ryan holding trophies. Ryan beside a sports car Sarah had never seen. But there wasn't a single photo of Helen, and there wasn't a single photo of Sarah. Not their wedding, not a holiday, not a moment. It was as if her existence had been erased. Sarah moved deeper, unsteady, passing a formal dining table set for 8, with a crystal vase empty of flowers. The kitchen gleamed with high-end appliances that looked unused. On the refrigerator, a child's crayon drawing was held by a magnet. 3 stick figures holding hands under a smiling sun. Above the tallest figure, in uneven black letters, was one word. Dad. Sarah's breath caught. Her fingers trembled as she touched the paper. It wasn't a rumor anymore. There had been a child living here, Ryan's child. A hallway led to several doors. A guest room, neat and unused. A spotless bathroom. Then a locked door at the end, too secure to be casual. Sarah pulled out the keyring and found a smaller key that fit. It took 3 tries to slide it in because her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Click. She pushed the door open, and the stench of sickness slammed into her. Alcohol wipes, medicine, sweat, something hopeless. Heavy curtains blocked the sunlight. As her eyes adjusted to the dimness, she saw a hospital bed in the center of the room. Empty. Plastic-covered mattress. An IV stand like a skeleton. Bottles of medication, many empty, scattered on a side table. An oxygen tank on the floor with its tube detached. This wasn't a bedroom. It was confinement. Then Sarah saw the far wall, and her knees almost buckled. The wall was painted a gentle pastel blue, childlike, comforting, and covered in photos that were nothing like the ones in the living room. In these, Ryan wasn't alone. He held a young woman with long hair and a bright smile, and between them was a little boy, 4 or 5, with Ryan's eyes and Ryan's grin. Photos at the beach, at a birthday party, on the same pale sofa in the living room, wrapped around each other like a perfect family. One photo made Sarah's stomach turn. The 3 of them smiling in this very room, standing at the foot of the hospital bed, while Helen lay behind them, frail and hollow-eyed, forced to be the backdrop to Ryan's secret happiness. Sarah couldn't breathe. The word renovations finally revealed its true meaning. Ryan hadn't been renovating a house. He had been renovating his entire life. Sarah, the legal wife in the city, kept away, described as too sick to travel. And here in Maple Hollow, a second family built inside his mother's home. The mistress, the child, the luxury, the toys, the weekly deliveries, all funded by lies and fake receipts. Helen wasn't just a witness. She had been a prisoner. locked away as her son turned her house into someone else's paradise and let her die slowly in the cold. Sarah sank to the hallway floor, her back against the doorframe, shaking so violently she thought she might break apart. Time blurred. Eventually, the shock hardened into something clean and icy. Anger with weight. This was not simply betrayal. It was cruelty. It was neglect that smelled like murder. Sarah forced herself up and went back inside, not to grieve, but to gather proof. She ripped photos from the wall, ignoring shattered frames. She needed evidence that couldn't be denied. Then she noticed the bedside cabinet, heavy and closed, and yanked its drawers open. The first drawer held sealed bottles, vitamins, mild painkillers, nothing that looked like serious medication. The second held syringes, cotton, alcohol pads. The third was packed. On top were adult diapers. Sarah's throat tightened with horror and pity. Underneath, she found a thin, worn notebook, a simple journal. Her hands shook for a different reason now as she opened it. The handwriting was older, careful but trembling. Helen's. Dates filled the pages. Ryan says he's renovating the house so I'll be comfortable, the early entry read. He's such a devoted son, God bless him. Page after page, the story changed. The house is finished, it's beautiful, but Ryan built the fence higher and says I shouldn't go outside. Then, Ryan brought a young woman named Chloe. He says she's a co-worker who needs a place for a while. Sarah's heart pounded as the next entries tightened like a noose. Chloe brought a little boy, Liam. Ryan says they're helping him, but his eyes look like Ryan's eyes as a child. I'm not foolish. I gave birth to Ryan, I know. Then, Ryan yelled when I asked questions. He said I'm confused. After that, he started locking my door from the outside. The handwriting grew shakier, more desperate. My heart medicine ran out. Ryan took it and replaced it with vitamins. He says it's better, but my chest hurts. Another entry. Ryan brought an attorney and forced me to sign papers. I refused. He threatened Sarah. He said Sarah would be hurt if I didn't comply. Sarah pressed her palm to her mouth to stop herself from screaming. Ryan had used her name as a weapon against his own mother. The final entry was barely legible. He isn't my Ryan anymore. Something evil took him. If you read this, Sarah, please, please punish him. Don't let him win. Sarah cried then, one sharp, broken spill of grief, for the woman she never got to truly know, for the suffering Helen endured alone, and for the years Sarah herself had been fooled. But the tears didn't last. Sarah wiped her face hard, collected the journal, gathered the ripped photos, and found a small stack of notes written in Chloe's handwriting. Shopping lists for formula, diapers, children's fever medicine. The message Sarah found in Ryan's office, the medicine ran out again, had been about Liam, not Helen. Ryan cared more about his secret child's fever than his own mother's heart. Sarah left the house carrying proof like a blade. Sunlight stabbed her eyes, and the clean air felt almost painful after the sick room stench. She walked straight to Denise Dawson's house and asked to use her phone. Denise's face tightened with alarm when she saw Sarah's expression. Inside the modest living room, Sarah spoke with a calm that sounded unnatural even to herself. He poisoned me with lies, she said softly. But he killed Helen. He locked her up and took her medicine. Denise's hands flew to her mouth. Sarah dialed Matthew Grant's law office, demanded him by name, and when he came on the line, she didn't waste a second. I'm in Maple Hollow, Sarah said. I entered Helen's house. I found evidence. She didn't die naturally. Ryan kept a second family there, a woman named Chloe and a child. I have Helen's journal and photographs. Silence filled the line, heavy and long. Grant finally exhaled. I suspected something, he admitted, voice dark. 2 months before Helen died, she called me secretly. She begged for help. She wanted to change her will. She wanted to leave everything to you, Sarah. Then Ryan showed up with documents supposedly signed by Helen. I knew it felt wrong, but I didn't have proof. Sarah's grip tightened. Now you do. Grant's tone snapped into command. Do nothing reckless. Don't call the police yet. Ryan will twist the narrative. Stay with Denise. I'm coming with officers from the local station. Sarah stared ahead, ice steady in her chest. He's not out of state, she added. Denise leaned in, nodding urgently. He's nearby, Denise told Grant. In Cedar Ridge. He built another house there for that woman. When he says he's traveling, that's where he goes. Grant went quiet again, then spoke with grim certainty. Good. Then we can catch him where he feels safest. 5 hours felt like a lifetime. Sarah sat rigid in Denise's living room, the journal on her lap like a sacred weight. She reread Helen's words again and again, not for new details, but to forge her resolve. Denise paced, peeking through curtains, jumping at every car sound. Sarah barely spoke. She didn't feel fear anymore, only a steady readiness, as if her grief had hardened into armor. When cars finally pulled up outside around late afternoon, Sarah stood without trembling. Grant entered, looking furious, sleeves rolled, followed by 2 officers. We've coordinated locally, he said. Let's go. The drive to Cedar Ridge took 20 minutes. The house they reached was new, modern, and blatant. Gray walls, bright trim, a low fence, toys scattered across the yard. Ryan stood outside in a polo shirt and shorts, laughing as he pushed a little boy on a swing. On the porch, Chloe sat with a cold drink, smiling like this was an ordinary happy day. The scene was so normal, it felt obscene. Denise whispered, "Oh my God," like a prayer and a curse together. Sarah opened the car door before Grant could stop her. She walked straight toward the open gate. Ryan heard gravel underfoot and turned with a grin still on his face, until he saw Sarah. The smile collapsed. His skin went pale, his mouth opening without sound. The swing drifted back too far and almost bumped the child. Chloe stood confused. "Ryan," she asked softly, "who is that?" Sarah stopped an arm's length away. The boy stared at her with wide eyes. Ryan's eyes. Sarah's voice didn't shake. "You said you were out of state," she said, each word cutting clean. Ryan swallowed hard. "Sarah, what are you doing here? This isn't what it looks like. I can explain." Sarah let out a small laugh that held no humor. "Which part will you explain first?" she asked. "The 7-year renovation lie? The fake receipts you hide in your desk? Or the story you told your neighbors, that I'm terminally ill?" Chloe's face drained of color. "What is she talking about?" she demanded, stepping forward. "You told me your wife died." Sarah looked at Chloe steadily. "I'm Sarah, his legal wife, very much alive." Chloe's knees buckled slightly, shock cracking her expression. Ryan tried to grab Sarah's arm. She jerked away like his touch burned. "Don't touch me!" Sarah snapped, voice rising for the first time. Grant and the officers approached behind her. Ryan stepped back instinctively, eyes darting. "Who are they? This is private. This is my marriage." Sarah took one step closer, her disgust blazing. "Is locking your mother in a room until she died a private? Is stealing her medication private? Is forcing her to sign papers and threatening me to control her private?" Ryan's face twisted, trying to summon intimidation. "You're lying," he barked. Sarah lifted Helen's journal. "You want to explain this?" she asked, and threw it at his chest. It hit him and fell open in the grass. Grant's voice turned icy. "Take him!" The officers moved fast, gripping Ryan's arms. He fought, sudden panic making him look small. "Let go. You can't." Grant spoke formally. "Ryan Carter, you are being detained for questioning regarding document fraud, asset embezzlement, and deliberate neglect of a dependent resulting in death." Chloe let out a broken sound and sank to the ground, clutching the child as he began to cry. Ryan twisted his head towards Sarah, hatred flashing. "This is your fault," he snarled. "You ruined my life." Sarah stared back, unflinching. "No," she said. "You ruined your own life. You ruined your mother's life. And now you're going to pay." The case tore through the region like a wildfire. Local papers ran the story. People who once praised Ryan as a devoted son learned what devotion had been hiding. The journal became a key piece of evidence, documenting coercion and the threat Ryan made using Sarah's name. The fake receipts and Chloe's notes supported the financial trail. Money funneled into a secret life while Helen was isolated. Denise's testimony confirmed Helen had been cut off from neighbors, and Chloe, sobbing on the witness stand, described how Ryan dismissed Helen's chest pain, how he took her heart medicine and replaced it with vitamins, insisting she was being dramatic. Ryan hired expensive lawyers and performed grief in court, claiming he loved his mother, that he was overwhelmed, that Sarah was vindictive. But when Helen's final entry was read aloud, her plea for Sarah to punish him, his act collapsed. The judge handed down a 15-year sentence. Ryan lost his reputation, his freedom, and every lie he had built his life on. That same day, Sarah filed for divorce. She didn't ask for marital assets. She wanted nothing tied to Ryan's corruption. Through Grant's legal work, the coerced documents were overturned, and Helen's property in Maple Hollow was secured in accordance with Helen's true intentions. Sarah made one last choice that surprised people. Chloe had been complicit in comfort, but she had also been lied to and used. The child, Liam, was innocent. Sarah insisted that while the Cedar Ridge house built with stolen money was seized, arrangements be made so Chloe and Liam had safe housing and support. She didn't do it for Chloe. She did it to cut the last strand of Ryan's poison out of her life, to refuse becoming cruel in response to cruelty. Justice for Sarah had to mean something more than revenge. A year later, the end of the lane in Maple Hollow looked brighter. The tall fence that once felt like a prison had been replaced with a low, welcoming hedge. The gate stood open more often than not. Sarah lived there now, in the house she'd once been forbidden to see. The cold, stale smell was gone. The living room held warm rugs and soft cushions. The wall of Ryan's self-obsessed photos had been cleared, replaced with simple art and peaceful words that calmed the eye. And the locked room, the room where Helen suffered, was no longer a place of fear. Its door stayed open, curtains pulled back, sunlight flooding in. Sarah had turned it into a small community reading room. The hospital bed was removed, the pastel wall repainted a soft ivory, shelves filled with books, and children from the neighborhood sat on floor cushions, reading, laughing, living. A wooden plaque hung above the door. Helen's little library. Denise stopped by often with tea and something fried and sweet, shaking her head like she still couldn't believe how the story ended. Sarah would smile, truly smile, because she hadn't just exposed a lie. She had transformed the place built for suffering into a place that gave people light. And if this story shook you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what you think Sarah should have done the moment she found those keys, because sometimes the scariest door isn't the one that's locked, but the one you finally decide to open.